Hello and welcome to Design Basics. This is part 1 of the coil feature. Part 2 is going to discuss how to make threads with the feature, but this is going to show you how to use the feature itself. So typically, you're going to need 2 pieces of information. And this can be made by having at least one drawing that's going to make your profile, and then an axis, which can be done by a sketch, a work axis, or of course the pre-made ones when you make your model. I'm going to use the sketch just for reference sake, so I'm going to choose the coil feature. It automatically chooses the profile as it's the only one to choose, and then I choose the axis point. So I'm going to choose, of course, my sketch. Now you can see it's creating a coil. It looks like a spring. The other thing we can do here is we can change the direction of the axis. So now it's going the opposite direction. And that's one option you can do. The other is changing the rotation from clockwise to counterclockwise. Now, if we go to the coil size, this is where you create the profile of your coil. So there's multiple different ways of making this. The first one I'm just going to talk about really quickly is the spiral feature. The spiral essentially makes a flat coil. This can be helpful for details, but it's not really going to help you if you want to make a spring or, of course, a thread. But essentially it'll have a pitch, so I can change this to 0.5. You can see it's a lot bigger. And it has revolutions of 6, but I can change that to 3 or 12, and you can see it'll add the revolutions in there. So if we go back to the other information here, to the regular coil feature, you're going to be utilizing 4 different pieces of information: pitch, height, revolution, and taper. So the pitch is essentially the distance from center to center of one revolution. The revolutions, of course, is how many times it's going to revolve. So I could change this to 5 or 4, and it'll revolve 4 times instead of 1, and it'll end at the exact same point the start of your profile is. The other piece of information, of course, is taper. So I can make that 5 degrees or -5, and it'll make it bigger or smaller respectively to the other end of the coil that is referred from the profile. And the last piece is height. But that's going to be used depending on which feature you use. So in pitch and revolution, I'm doing pitch and revolution, obviously. The other way is revolution and height. So essentially the way that this one goes is you would state you want a height of 2.5 inches, let's say in this example, and 4 revolutions. So I could actually change this to, let's say, 6. It's going to keep the same height, but it's going to revolve it more times. The other way to use this is, of course, the pitch and height. The great thing with this feature is you can actually have differing lengths, and this will actually stop at a different location. So for instance, if I decided to go with 1/2 inch and change this to 2.75, you can see that it's actually on the opposite starting point on this coil, and you can see it's about 180 degrees difference because of the pitch in this case from the starting profile. But as you can see, it looks like a spring. Now, if we go back, there's one other piece of information you can use, and it's the coil ends. So the way that this works is you can have natural or flat. So I'm going to change the starting point to a natural or flat and have the end become a natural. So the way this works is essentially it's going to try to flatten out the bottom more like an actual produced spring, let's say for a car, and this is going to give you a little bit more of a flatter spot. And then as it coils up, you can see that if I take a side view here, this is flat and this is more continuing the revolutions. So that's essentially what you use to change the profile. Now if I change the top to a flat as well, you'll see that both have changed to be more flat. I have to rotate it just to give you a better view, of course, but it's be more flat. So that's how you can utilize both to make it have different geometries in it. So with that being said, you can definitely make your own springs or other features. So if I wanted to actually change the sketch, say I decide to change it to some sort of polygon. And I'll dimension it to be, make this a reference. so that it won't see it. And then I'm going to make this tangent to here. So now when I change this, you can see it's actually changed it to have more of a interesting hexagon shape. So this is how you can utilize the feature differently depending on what you use for your profiles. So this is the beginning point for using a coil feature. In the next video, we're going to discuss how to make a thread and how to read a chart in order to make thread specifications from those charts. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, this is Tyler with 3D Printer Store. I hope you have a great day.